5 minutes ago, Buckingham Palace broke the silence with a statement that has rocked not only the United Kingdom, but the world. King Charles has officially confirmed his abdication date, an act that hasn't been witnessed in modern royal history. And the most shocking part, the crown is already being prepared for William. What led to this seismic shift? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to kindly subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Like, comment, and share. The words used in the statement were chillingly definitive, final, and irreversible. There was no room left for speculation. King Charles is stepping down. Cameras flashed, reporters scrambled, and across the gates of Buckingham Palace, the crowd gasped in unison. It wasn't just the announcement. It was the timing, the tone, the finality. No one was prepared for a monarch to end his reign, not with a coronation, but with a farewell. Within minutes, images began circulating of royal aides looking visibly shaken. One official, who has served under 3 monarchs, was seen whispering hurriedly into a phone, his expression pale and tight. What was meant to be a simple statement release turned into an orchestrated, palace-wide response operation. While some onlookers cheered at the idea of fresh energy entering the monarchy through William, others stood in stunned silence. Social media exploded with speculation. Was Charles ill? Was he forced? Or had something far more personal triggered this final decision? There are now strong hints this move wasn't sudden at all. Insiders point to signs as early as last autumn: cancelled trips, reduced public appearances, last-minute private meetings with William and Anne. One former advisor even suggested the abdication plan had been under silent development for over 6 months, crafted under pressure, negotiated in secrecy. Whispers are now rising about underlying issues, matters of health, emotional strain, and internal palace discord. Charles, known for carrying his burdens privately, may have finally reached a point where the weight became too much to bear. Some claim it wasn't just the stress of duty, but the loneliness that pushed him toward the inevitable. But what appeared as a royal decision made in clarity may actually be the product of months, perhaps years, of buried pressure, secret meetings, and a deeply fractured family legacy. Hours before the public ever heard the word abdication, Prince William was rushed to a late-night briefing at Sandringham. No staff, no press, just the heir and the monarch. What was discussed that night altered the course of royal destiny forever. It was well past midnight when William arrived, the estate blanketed in silence. Yet inside the main drawing room, the air was reportedly electric with tension. Charles was already waiting, alone. No advisors, no bodyguards, just a small locked box on the table between them. What followed was not a conversation, it was a reckoning. Charles, long known for deliberation and delay, didn't waste a second. He slid the envelope across the table, bearing the words, "For William only," and with a quiet but firm voice, began to speak. Witnesses, what few there were, later described, hearing raised voices from the hallway. Some say the future king shouted in disbelief, while others claim it was the sound of a man wrestling with duty versus his own instincts. Charles was clear. The decision had already been made. "You must be ready by morning," he reportedly said. There was no room for debate. It wasn't just a warning. It was a command from a father, a monarch, and a man facing the limits of his time. Inside that envelope, according to those close to the family, were handwritten instructions, a sealed statement to be released post-abdication, and a list of protocols to be enacted within 12 hours. The weight of it all, constitutional procedures, symbolic duties, political coordination, fell onto William's shoulders before he even had time to catch his breath. But this wasn't just about structure, it was about legacy, and Charles wasn't handing over a crown, he was handing over unfinished wars, family fractures, and public skepticism. William's reaction was far from immediate acceptance. Palace insiders confirmed that his first response was hesitation, not because he didn't see it coming, but because of who wasn't in the room. Catherine, it's believed that William was furious. She had been kept in the dark until the very last moment. He reportedly questioned whether this was the right time, whether his family was emotionally ready for the crown's unbearable weight. But Charles wouldn't yield. By dawn, William's entire schedule had been cleared by silent order. Calls were made, cars rerouted, aides were instructed to prepare documentation they hadn't yet seen. It was as if a silent operation had been activated long ago, waiting only for this whispered code word from the king himself. And once uttered, everything snapped into motion. But while the midnight moment sealed the future, the past months have been anything but calm. Behind royal gates, behind the grandeur of state dinners and waving hands, stood a man breaking under pressure. Insiders reveal a hidden crisis, one so severe it left King Charles no choice but to step down. But was it purely health or something far more damaging? For months, something had been off. Those closest to the king whispered of a growing fragility, not just physical, but emotional. At Balmoral, traditionally a place of refuge for Charles, aides reported an uncharacteristic silence. Then came the breaking point. According to a senior source, the monarch suffered an emotional breakdown behind closed doors, shouting at no one, pacing for hours, refusing to eat, and reportedly saying, "I can't carry it anymore." It was there, in that historic Scottish retreat, that the cracks turned into a full collapse. Royal doctors were brought in discreetly, and what they saw alarmed them. Their recommendation was blunt: immediate withdrawal from duties, complete mental and physical rest. The words abdication and health preservation began appearing in royal briefing papers. But if the crisis was medical, it was not isolated. A deeper rot had already taken hold. Sources close to the situation claimed that Charles had been wrestling with a second war, one behind palace doors. His relationship with Camilla, once hailed as redemptive, had begun to fray. Insiders described frequent blow-ups over the past year. Disagreements on royal image, handling of the Sussex fallout, and Camilla's growing involvement in sensitive royal operations. Tensions allegedly exploded during a private retreat where Camilla accused Charles of withholding the truth about his abdication thoughts, a charge that reportedly left him speechless. Adding to the pressure, Princess Anne and Prince Edward, traditionally silent supporters of the crown, allegedly began pushing for a resolution, not in public, but in private. They made it clear the monarchy could not survive another season of instability. Anne, described by one aide as ruthless in her realism, reportedly warned her brother that hesitation could lead to public disillusionment or worse, calls for Republican reform. And then came the foreign pressure. Diplomats from key allied nations quietly voiced concerns with global political shifts, war in Europe, and economic volatility. The image of a faltering British monarch sent shock waves through sensitive international channels. According to leaked memos, one ambassador directly questioned whether Charles had the stamina for the modern age. The palace didn't reply, but those comments didn't go unnoticed. Faced with collapsing health, fractured relationships, internal dissent, and rising international concern, Charles stood on a cliff edge. Abdication was no longer a choice, it was an inevitability. And yet, for all the chaos surrounding him, he made one decision in total clarity: William would rise. Not when ready, but now. As Charles buckled behind palace walls, an entirely different storm was brewing in Prince William's private circle, one that could have jeopardized the entire transfer of power. Sources close to Kensington Palace revealed that as William prepared to step into his father's shoes, Catherine wasn't celebrating, she was crying. The Princess of Wales reportedly broke down after learning the full scope of what's to come. Why wasn't she told earlier? It was never supposed to happen this fast. For Catherine, the shift from Duchess to future Queen was always a distant drumbeat, one she had prepared for, but never truly confronted. The night the royal machinery moved into motion, she was left out of the initial loop. And when the truth finally reached her, it didn't arrive gently. Palace aides say she was blindsided, overwhelmed by the sheer speed and gravity of the transition, and devastated by the realization that her world had changed without warning and without her input. Behind the walls of Kensington Palace, she reportedly wept for hours, not out of resentment, but out of fear. Fear for her children, for her husband, and for the life that was now crumbling under the weight of royal expectation. One aide described her as haunted, staring out a window in silence as staff scrambled to reconfigure protocols and security for what would now be a queen in waiting. The shift meant more than ceremonial titles. For Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte, visibility would surge overnight. Cameras, scrutiny, expectations. They would no longer be protected by youth or distance. Catherine, a mother before anything else, was said to have voiced immediate concern about what this would do to them. Their innocence, she feared, would be the first casualty in the monarchy's new chapter. Sources also say the emotional toll on Catherine wasn't only about duty. Her own health, something rarely discussed publicly, has reportedly been under quiet observation. The weight of royal responsibility had already tested her stamina. Now facing the role of queen consort under such abrupt conditions, those close to her worry whether she has the emotional space to endure it. And while William carried the composure expected of a future king, behind closed doors, he was torn. On one hand, his father's crumbling condition demanded decisive leadership. On the other, his partner in every battle was struggling. Those within the inner circle claim William was caught in a silent war between protecting his family and upholding the crown. Every step toward the throne was a step away from the life he promised her. Yet amid the chaos and heartbreak inside the family, one figure emerged from the shadows, determined to influence who truly holds the throne's power. When Camilla heard the abdication date had been finalized, she was said to be staggered. But she wasn't done yet. In a tense, private standoff, she reportedly made one final plea to Charles. Delay it, stop it, or risk everything unraveling. She had always been at Charles's side through scandal, through rebuilding, through his long wait to the throne. But this decision had been made without her. That was the sting. Palace insiders say Camilla was blindsided by the abruptness of it all, learning of the irreversible abdication only hours before it was due to go public. Her fury wasn't just emotional, it was political. She believed she had earned a place in the upper echelons of monarchy, yet now her future was being swept aside in silence. In a confrontation that reportedly erupted inside Windsor Castle, Camilla cornered Charles with words as sharp as they were desperate. A senior aide is said to have overheard raised voices. Camilla accusing him of betrayal, of secrecy, of undermining her years of loyalty. She allegedly demanded answers. Why now? Why without her? Why this path that threatened to erase her from history before her legacy could even take root? Her fear was unmistakable. With Charles stepping down, her own titles queen consort, patron of numerous causes, key royal figure would be cast into uncertainty. There were whispers that she'd already begun reaching out behind the scenes, privately contacting a parliament liaison she trusted, hoping to secure her public role regardless of the transition. But time was not on her side, and the machinery had already moved beyond her control. Charles, however, stood his ground. According to those close to him, his response was short, solemn, and final. This is bigger than either of us. He had made his choice not for Camilla, not even for William, but for the institution. And that meant walking away, even if it fractured everything around him. What happens to Camilla now remains a mystery. Some say she'll fade quietly into the background, retaining only ceremonial influence. Others believe she'll fight publicly or privately to remain relevant. But one thing is certain, the woman who once stood at the very heart of Charles's world has now found herself staring at a throne she may never truly touch again. But the tension didn't stop at Charles and Camilla, because the royal institution itself is being torn apart from the inside out. Whispers are circulating about a secretive group of senior royals and government advisors known internally as the Shadow Council. They've met in silence for months, and now it seems they've finally pulled the trigger on Charles's reign. This was never going to be just about one man's decision. According to multiple palace insiders, a hidden network began forming behind the scenes as early as late spring. Its members, not the usual faces seen on palace balconies. This was an internal alignment of quiet power. Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and a handful of non-public advisors whose names never grace headlines. They weren't seeking attention. They were crafting contingency. Their goal, it said, was stability. After multiple missteps and rising concerns around Charles's declining strength, they feared that the monarchy could not afford a repeat of past turbulence. Behind Balmoral's locked doors, away from cameras and courtiers, they began holding what have now been referred to as shadow sessions, meetings focused solely on the crown's continuity. The most stunning revelation: by December, this council had reportedly reached a decision. Sources claimed they presented Charles with an ultimatum: announce a transition plan or risk being undermined internally. While some advocated for a soft transition by 2027 time to prepare William, ease Camilla's concerns, and smooth out political optics, others insisted on immediate action. The risk, they warned, wasn't just in delay, it was in visibility. Every public stumble, every cancelled appearance, every emotional crack was being documented and dissected. Waiting, they argued, would only magnify instability, and Charles, though shaken, did not resist them. According to those close to the council, he recognized the inevitable. But the real twist: Prince William was allegedly never told the full extent of this internal orchestration. While he had been briefed on growing concerns, he did not know that his father had been cornered, that his rise was not purely a torch passed with grace, but one extracted by institutional necessity. This shadow council didn't act in malice. In their eyes, they were protecting the monarchy from implosion. But their secrecy now casts a long shadow over what the public believed to be a personal abdication. It raises a harrowing question: was King Charles truly stepping down on his own? Or was he quietly pushed out by those who claimed to serve him? But as the institution wrestled with control, the outside world responded with a deafening wave of emotion, and not all of it was supportive. Crowds gathered outside the palace. Some waved flags, others wept, a few protested. The nation is split in its reaction to the abdication. Many cheer for the modern king in waiting, but others fear what William's reign could mean. From the moment the official statement was released, every major news outlet erupted into round-the-clock coverage. The BBC, Sky, international networks, all flooded with speculation, expert panels, and public opinion hotlines. Some called it a bold and necessary step for a monarchy that had grown tired under the weight of age. Others called it a betrayal, an abandonment of duty, a disruption of sacred continuity. On social media, the divide became a firestorm. Hashtags trended globally. One moment, number long give William dominated timelines. The next number not my king surged with equal force. Campaigns were launched within hours, some celebrating the dawn of a new youthful royal chapter, while others questioned whether this had all been engineered from the shadows without public consent. The crown had moved, but the people hadn't moved as one. What's more revealing is the generational fault line now fully exposed. Younger audiences, long disengaged from royal tradition, suddenly rallied around the idea of a modern monarch. William and Catherine, to many, represent progress, a break from outdated formality. But among older loyalists, the sentiment was more bitter. Charles had waited decades. And now, after such a short reign, he was gone, pushed aside, they believed, by a mix of internal politics and emotional vulnerability. Then came the political echoes. In Scotland and Wales, leaders began calling for urgent discussions on the monarchy's relevance in the modern Union. Quiet murmurs about independence were now reignited, laced with a subtle warning. This abdication may have symbolic consequences beyond Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, England saw something entirely different. Pro-William rallies sprouted across cities. Crowds held signs that read, "Future begins now," chanting for change, for strength, for hope. They see William not as a continuation, but a fresh start, an opportunity to redefine what royalty means in an unstable world. Yet just blocks away from those same gatherings, protesters held signs with a haunting message. This wasn't our choice, and that's the tragedy at the center of it all. For all the power transitions, formal ceremonies, and carefully managed headlines, one question echoed louder than the rest. Who really decides the direction of the monarchy? Is it tradition? Is it the crown, or is it the people? And while the nation questions the monarchy's future, William was left to face the most intimate question of all. Was he truly ready? He didn't ask for the crown today, but it was placed in his hands, both literally and symbolically. William now stands on the edge of history. And behind his calm expression lies a storm of fear, hope, and inner doubt. In the hushed chamber of royal exchange, Charles removed a small object from his coat pocket. The personal seal of the monarch, passed only once before in living memory. Without fanfare, without cameras, he pressed it into William's hand. The gesture was quiet, but the weight of it thundered. Witnesses say there were no grand speeches, just a few words from father to son, words not meant for the world, but ones that still found their way to it. "I'll protect it with everything," William whispered, his voice trembling not from fear, but from the unbearable burden of inheritance. The official footage was brief. Charles's hand on William's shoulder, a pause heavy with unspoken truths, and then silence. But that moment rippled far beyond the frame. It marked the end of one era and the instant creation of another. The public saw composure. What they didn't see was what came next. Just hours later, aides spotted William pacing through a private corridor, clenching a set of handwritten notes. They weren't part of any planned address, but insiders say they were likely drafts, perhaps of the first speech he would deliver as king in waiting. Lines written in his own hand, scrolled in the quiet aftermath of a father's departure and a nation's anxious gaze. And yet something was missing, or rather, someone Catherine was absent. So were George, Charlotte, and Louis. The absence did not go unnoticed. It wasn't protocol, it was deliberate. Royal insiders revealed that the family had chosen to remain at Windsor, shielding the children from the immediate glare of history. But speculation exploded. Was the absence a protective measure or a sign of deeper hesitation within the family itself? Meanwhile, changes began behind the scenes. Overnight, William's private office was restructured. Long-standing staff were reassigned. New briefings were drawn. Intelligence access codes, foreign policy updates, and confidential dispatches all redirected. It was the kind of machinery that doesn't wait for ceremony. The moment Charles stepped back, the machine shifted forward, and William became more than a prince. He became the pulse of the crown. But just as the transition settles, one final twist was quietly leaked from inside Clarence's house, and it may change everything we thought we knew. Just hours after the abdication announcement, a sealed letter from King Charles dated 3 months ago was leaked, and its contents threatened to ignite the biggest succession crisis in a generation. Because in it, Charles names someone else. The letter wasn't meant for public eyes, but when an unnamed insider handed it over to a foreign outlet, the story detonated like a bomb inside the monarchy. It was handwritten, reportedly, in Charles's distinctive script, and marked to be opened only in the event of a disputed transition. That line alone sent shock waves through the media. But what followed sent the institution into silent panic. The letter, as redacted and leaked, introduced a term no one expected to hear at this stage: fallback heir. The phrase immediately raised alarms: a fallback heir. In the event that William refused the crown, or if, according to the letter, he was deemed emotionally or constitutionally unfit, a secondary successor had been identified. The letter didn't state the name outright in the version that surfaced. That line was blacked out, but insiders close to Clarence House hinted at two possibilities. Princess Anne, the most seasoned and respected royal of her generation, or George, young but symbolically powerful, as the next lineage link. Both options carried enormous consequences. What makes this more dangerous is not just the content, but the timing. If this letter had come before the official transition, it would have merely stirred debate, but leaked after the seal was passed, after the country had declared William the new face of the monarchy. It became a weapon, a wedge, a doubt, and Buckingham Palace's silence has only made things worse. Requests for comment were met with cold refusal. No denials, no clarifications, just a brief statement that said the matters surrounding transition remain internal to the royal household. That's all the public needed to spiral further. Protesters who had already questioned the transparency of the abdication began demanding answers. Was this succession legitimate? Was William the monarch by merit or by political maneuvering? Royal experts now warn that this could trigger one of the greatest constitutional standoffs in modern palace history. If there was a formal contingency that bypassed William, it would challenge not only his claim, but the very nature of how monarchy is interpreted in a democratic age. Is legacy stronger than preparation? Is symbolism stronger than stability? The calls for full transparency are growing louder. Former palace advisors, academics, even foreign leaders have begun to weigh in. Some urge calm, others urge a formal inquiry. One thing is certain: this one letter, hidden in the shadows of Charles's reign, has undone the image of a clean and peaceful transition. And as the dust settles over a royal shift, unlike any before, one truth remains: this monarchy may have just stepped into a future no one saw coming. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and share.